Would you say that the evolution of science is heading in? Are we at a revolution state, or where are we on that kind of evolution of
I
science?
think we've had the revolution. Science used to be the plaything of the rich and wealthy, right? It wasn't Joe Bloggs in the pub garden that came up with the understanding of the nothing against Joe Bloggs in the pub garden. I wish I was him. But it was people with resources and education that cost a ton of money and the ability to have the time on their hands to be independently wealthy to go and do these experiments, right? And so for a long time, science was the plaything of the rich and privileged, right? And what essentially happened, I think, is that the rich and wealthy people were like, "Oh, how can we make more money?" Well, we can exploit people, and we can do that by building factories that they work in. But we need to train them to work the machines. So we do need to send them to school. And then you start educating everybody. And so as you start educating the people with a genuine talent for science and engineering start to come out of the general population, and then science becomes accessible to the general population because it starts being taught in schools, because people realize that it's better to have a smart civilization than a dumb civilization for the general well-being, right? Well, and so
most people you hope would, right?
Progressives do,
progressives, that is the key definitely.
But you can actually see the kind of like the history of science as it develops. It becomes more and more accessible to more and more people. The language that is used becomes easier to understand, right? So classic example is 200 years ago it was still the rich and famous, it was still the rich and independently wealthy people. They call these things thermodynamics and stuff like that, and it's like, well, what does that mean? But nowadays you call things, you give it simple terms like the equations of motion rather than Newton's laws, right? And you call things like the cosmic microwave background rather than the Penzias-Wilson effect or something like that, right? So science has become more and more accessible because we recognize that it's good for people to understand science, at least in the most part. But now you're seeing attacks on the science system itself because there are some rich and powerful people. We're at the other end of the spectrum now. There's rich and powerful people that don't want people to know this.
Yeah, because it's highly advantageous to get let's say an education gap, right, for people.
Yeah. You keep the poor. Yeah,
exactly. So that is the first.
But I put education on the same. I call education a right. I think education should be a right, as well as healthcare. Healthcare should be a right. You should have the right to be happy, and you have a much better chance of being happy if you're well educated and healthy.
Yeah, and I think if you solve the happiness problem, or at least a content,
you don't have to be. You
get
don't
rid of some of the other issues that people have that then get projected in terms of like wars and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
And we have to get away from this notion that being financially saturated, right, is a good thing. Well, I mean, in the Star Trek universe, it's not a problem, right? People
of course.
are there to better themselves, not earn material wealth. But we might start to. I see this in the younger generations, right? Well, they're also tempted by technology as well, but that's probably a good thing as long as it's harnessed in a productive way. And we do see a lot of productivity coming out of the younger generations, just in a very different way to the boomer generation, right? And you and I are in the gap between the two.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We kind of have the same hard work will pay off ethic, but the up and coming generations kind of have the, if I just mess around, something cool will happen.
Yeah.